Welcome, welcome to the Sharpe Way show. Yes, it is 7 p.m. on the East Coast, so you guys now have to look at my mug. That's the rules. Thank you so much for showing up. I do appreciate everyone who's watching. As of course, I will ask you every single time, please like, comment, share. It is the only way we can get around that media blockade, the only way we can get around that blackout that we have. Please like, comment, and share. It does matter. Guys, today I am very lucky. I have with me an entrepreneur, an edutainer, a great individual who considers himself an empowerment broker. The man himself, Seko Varner. How are you, sir?
Man, I'm feeling bountifully blessed to be on the Sharpe Way today.
I love that so much. I love that so much. One of the major reasons why I wanted to have you on is because you think in a way that not enough people think. And that is, you're someone who thinks that the way that we grow as Americans, but particularly as people in brown and black communities, the black community in specific, that the way we're going to grow is by empowering not only each other, but ourselves individually too, right? Helping ourselves, helping our family and friends, and to move forward in a much more entrepreneurial spirit. I know you're about that. A lot of people aren't, particularly people who would call themselves and say that they're trying to support poor black and brown communities. Most of them, the first thing they think of, in fact, the only thing they think of is it's got to be a government program. That's the only way that can be. There's nothing else. But you think there's more than that. Tell me about that.
Well, the reason I think there's more is because I like multiple streams of income.
Okay.
And so income is also like multiple streams of empowerment.
Multiple streams of empower. Oh, I love that. Yeah. Okay.
So, I mean, think about it. If you want to eat to be healthy,
yeah,
you're going to have vitamins.
Yep.
Primarily, you're going to have a lot of minerals because your body needs more minerals than anything else. You're going to need water.
Yep.
You're going to need vitamin D, hopefully from sunlight, but you can get it from some great foods as well.
Sure.
So you need multiple streams of empowerment.
Got it.
To live well. To live well.
So the empowerment piece that I like, right? You do focus on ownership, which I do all the time. And I think you might know my story. Some of the people listening may know my story. I grew up in the South Bronx in the 70s.
New York.
Absolutely. That's where I grew up. And to get my family out of that, right? My parents, they went into an entrepreneurial hustle mindset, right? My father was a DJ on the weekends, and my mother, and this is disco era, 70s disco. This is Donna Summer and the Bee Gees, right? So, that was the disco era. And my mother and I was a kid, 8, 10 years old. We were out cleaning houses and cleaning offices. And that's how we made extra money, so we could save enough money so we can move out. And to us, we moved out to Long Island, Suffolk County, and to us, that was like Jefferson's moving up to the east side. I mean, that was the Jeffersons for us, right? It was a big deal for us to move to Long Island. And I think you're in the same mindset, right?
Absolutely. Look, I was born in Brooklyn, so salute to all the New Yorkers, salute to all the Brooklynites. Brooklyn is a blood type. All right, I'll leave it at that. But when you look, if we just take the beautiful city of New York City, and New York State in general, you'll see that before there was a lot of government positions and public this and public that, those who migrated or immigrated to New York had to empower themselves through entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Right. Right. So I think that tends to be the way. When I look at the great empires of, the motherland, Africa, those great empires had a strong financial basis to them.
Yep. Absolutely.
They had tax laws. They had business strategies.
Yep.
They had women that were in charge of businesses. They had men in charge of businesses. Yes. Commerce. They traveled. They did trade with other nations. So
and they even crossed the Sahara. They crossed the Sahara Desert to trade.
They crossed the Sahara. Mm-hmm. They crossed the continent.
Yes.
So you'll find when you come back, when you really do the history of the of North America and South America, you'll find that some of the people that we would call indigenous or Indians were trading with people that they called indigenous or Africans who looked, had afros and were darkly melanated and didn't have straight hair, and they were trading. As a matter of fact, when Christopher Columbus, who never set in America really, that's kind of interesting story, but he never really set in the Americas. His brother, who was with him, kept the notes and wrote things.
Okay.
And they stated that they saw Moorish or African Negroid people when they traveled to the area that we now call the United States of America. Well, the Americas.
It's Caribbean. It was the Caribbean area.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So we traveled and traded with everybody.
So
and I think
this is
that's
another
what made
piece.
things great.
And I think we actually did the same thing when, I never forget what Killer Mike said. And Killer Mike did a series on Netflix, right? And he said,
"Yeah, that was fun."
Yes, you remember that, right? And one of the things he said that really stuck with me, and to be clear, I want to do a disclaimer before I say this. I am not advocating for any type of segregation. I'm just explaining what he said. He said there was an advantage to segregation, and the advantage was there had to be black businesses because you couldn't go to the white ones. Right? So the advantage of segregation, there had to be a black shoemaker. There had to be a black guy who owned a diner. There had to be, black lawyers and black doctors because you couldn't go to the white ones. There were segregation laws. So by default, it forced the black communities to create their own communities by default. Again, like I said, not saying segregation was good, but I am saying that what segregation created was many of these black Wall Streets that now actually began to grow because of black entrepreneurship. And that actually caused a lot of a government to come in and destroy those black Wall Streets because we actually started to grow ourselves. And I'll even go further. I'm sorry. No, you got something to say. Go ahead.
No, I was totally agreeing with you. I would change one term. Please. I wouldn't say that, blacks were forced to create businesses. We did what people normally do.
Oh, I like that. I'll take that better. Yes, I'll take what you said better.
People normally do. They create enterprise. They create things. And so we did what people normally do under a discriminatory, segregated situation where we're always under a threat of violence if we seemed uppity. But we still did great things. Now, we can talk about that with my family because on my father's side of the family, my grandfather did a lot of things in a segregated area, and he had a great business, had a lot of land, and whites and blacks were able to go to his stores and, work with his businesses. Now, the blacks couldn't go to the white stores and businesses, but it's so it was an open way for the whites, generally the whites at that time, but we did work together, not because we were forced to, because that's what people generally do.
And I love that. And you always hear me say this. It takes government to perpetuate racism. Without government policies perpetuating racism, people tend to start working together. It's a natural thing. And I said, in the South, why was there a requirement for segregation laws? Because we would have integrated. That's why there had to be laws for it. Otherwise, we would have naturally began to integrate.
I believe that the reason that people of African descent, primarily those foundational Black Americans, those whose ancestors were those who went through the enslavement process, the Ma'afa here in the United States of America, the reason why we have such challenges is because the federal government, the state government, and the city governments all codified white supremacy.
Yes, absolutely.
It was codified, and it became the natural law of the land, became the natural state of the land. So even though when laws changed, traditions, behaviors, habits, norms didn't change. And so when we talk about the government, I do believe that our federal government, in particular, to be the overseeing organization, even though they've worked to change things. So they saw that there was a problem. There was work to change it, but there was no restitution to the people who faced the problems.
Sure.
Furthermore, they may have taken a slow time in changing things to stop the problems. But because it took such a long time, and because they never provided the restitution, Now we've had generations upon generations and generations that of people that are dealing with loss. And here's the deal. When something bad happens to you, the person who did the crime and the person who was the victim both have a responsibility towards fixing the situation. So those who felt the crime, they have to do things to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Right.
That it stops, and that they find their way to claw themselves back out of the hole that they were put in.
Yes.
Now, the people who did the crime have to make sure that it stops.
Yep.
Have to make sure it doesn't happen again, which America has been slowly doing. And then they have to pay restitution. That's the thing that our great government fails to do, and we've been asking for since emancipation. But the federal government, the state government, the city government, and, you know, by proxy, all those who were in the powered situation refuse to do that. And that's why we've had long-standing problems. And all the problems you can find in the so-called Black community, in my position, stem from the economics.
Yes.
And every time that things were going great and we created our own, it was legal and it was not punished for that to be destroyed by white supremacists.
No, I agree with you completely. I'm with you. I'll go to both parts of what you said. One part of what you said, people get upset about, but you're right in the money, and that is the victim also has a responsibility.
Right.
And it's nowhere near the responsibility of the offender, obviously. But there still was a responsibility. And when you say that, people immediately go, you're victim shaming. And I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, if we're going to live together in any environment, any society, the victim has to also take some responsibility and saying, you know what? Maybe there are certain things I could have, should have not done. Maybe there's ways I can make myself better in some way. Or if nothing else, just to say, once you pay your debt, I don't have to forget what you did, but I probably should forgive you, because we've got to live in the same world together. So once you've paid your debt, to include restitution, I should be like, you know what? I don't forget what you did, but I can forgive you for now because you paid it back. Let's try to live together again. And the people around have to also do that.
I think the problem in the Black community in America is we forgave too early.
Yeah. No, but there was no debt payment. See, the debt payment comes first. Early. Then you forgive.
The reason that I think so is kind of like Stockholm syndrome. You know, I was born here and I'm American. I'm going to get along with my brother, man. That's what, you know, my book tells me to do. But your brother, man, has still not done the things that needs to do to provide the restoration that needs to happen. But I do agree, like you were saying, and I really kind of amplify that. The reason I don't get normally accused of victim shaming is I don't say that the victim could say, oh, there's something I could have done differently and it wouldn't have put me in this position. For instance, I have people in my family who were sexually abused. There's no way, particularly in today's culture, that you can say that they did anything that put them in a position where they should have been.
I wasn't clear.
Hold on. But it is up to them to work the healing process.
Yes. But the victim of that crime isn't just the person who's abused. Obviously, they are clearly a victim, but so is everyone in their world also, right?
Particularly those they raise and care for.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, you know, if my daughters, I hope it never happens, if it happens, clearly they're the primary victim, but so am I. And so is her sister, and so is their mother, right? All of the people are all victims in this crime against one person. And maybe it's time for me to rethink, what could I have done better? How can I fix it? How can I make sure my other daughter doesn't happen? Can I do the other things? What we see constantly, and since you brought up the idea of the sexual piece, is why do so many women not say anything, particularly young girls, because they think they won't get support from the people around them.
And they don't believe they're empowered enough to make a change.
Yes.
Which is the same reason that people of African descent said, okay, so now we don't have to be enslaved and in prison. Well, can we get this? No. Okay, well, then I'm going to stop asking because they're empowered and they can still beat me. And he still got a gun. And so, but the key thing that we're talking about here, Larry, is ownership.
Yes.
That's the word, ownership. So I'm saying that the people who've been victimized have to take ownership of their own healing and restoration. And the victimizer needs to take ownership of the fact that they need to stop it.
Yep.
They need to make sure it doesn't continue, and they need to pay restitution. And that's the American way. So if you do a crime in America, they're going to put you in jail to stop it. They're going to try to put you in correctional facilities so you can be corrected so it won't continue, and you have to pay restitution. How hypocritical is our country?
No, I'm agreeing with you. Absolutely.
But ownership is the key thing.
Yep.
Ownership and
well, look,
so
this is what I want to bring up a point that I think is critical. The system that we have now is the one that we have today. We can absolutely fix it and make it better, no doubt. With that in mind, I think the average person who wants to make that positive change you talk about needs to try to use that system to the best of their ability to gain both financial empowerment, emotional empowerment, every type of empowerment they can, so they can bring that power to bear to make change, right? I mean, isn't that what we should be doing? Should we be trying? When I talk about the libertarian movement, and this is a libertarian movement I bring up all the time, people say, how can I do something? And I say, make yourself stronger. Because if each one of you is stronger, then the movement's stronger. I say that about the Black community. How can I do something to make the Black community better? Make yourself stronger. The stronger you are, the stronger we are, right? So let's all become strong, and then we have power. Ashe,
and which can kind of translate into strength, actually, or power. It's interesting. I was born in Brooklyn, New York. All right. So I said, Brooklyn's a blood type. Salute to the Brooklynites. My father was a pastor of Nazarene Congregational Church in Brooklyn, New York. I can't think. I want to say McDaniel Street. It's on McDaniel Street. So I kind of grew up in what's now considered liberation theology. All right. And liberation theology in a nutshell, is your interaction with the Almighty should empower you to overcome your challenges. And if it's not, then you need to restructure the relationship you have with the Almighty. Okay.
I love that.
I love that. So I've taken that and I've developed what I call the empowerment agenda. And that means that our agenda, what's on our agenda, when I wake up, what's on my agenda is empowerment.
Okay.
So it might be spiritual, it might be physical. I've been talking a lot about that politically. All right. And financially, so anybody knows me knows I'm going to talk about it politically, and I'm going to talk about it financially. I don't talk about it as much spiritually. And, I'm kind of out of shape right now. So I'm trying to get back on that physical empowerment. The Rona wasn't good to me, man.
I know the feeling.
Yeah, it wasn't good to me. It's been good to some people when I didn't take the ownership of the opportunity to make it beautiful and bountiful.
But you just said the most important thing. You didn't say, yes, you didn't go, oh, COVID destroyed me. Oh, you didn't do that. You said, yeah, it happened, but it's an event that I have to take ownership of. I got to try to fix and make better. Exactly right. By the way, guys, if you want more on Seko, head over to Twitter, Seko Varner. Check out what he's doing. Please do that. Please do. He's also, by the way, the owner of Positive Vibes Inc. If you want to check that out, it's positivevibes.net. I put all the stuff in his show notes. Click it, see what he's doing. Check that out, please. And of course, always like, comment, and share. Can I grab a couple comments, Seko? You okay? Can I grab a couple?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right.
Let's empower our listeners.
Brennan says, it takes money to get those streams of income. A large portion of the population doesn't make enough primary income to even have $1,000 in savings. Some, like me, can take their savings and start a business. Those who would go bankrupt 1 month without a steady job, not so much. It's a valid point, isn't it?
I love it. And what it speaks to is team. It speaks to team. So he's saying some of us can't do it alone. But what's not being said is we can team up with people.
Absolutely. Yes.
So I totally agree with what he's saying, because if you're one, and I'm glad this was brought up, if you're one of the people that says, I'm having a hard time by myself or with my small group, then it's important to team up. team up with those who have more resources, team up with those who have other resources. You know, if Larry has $1 and I have $1, you know, we really can't buy a whole lot with our singular dollars. But truthfully, we can put our $2 together. We can buy some water, some sugar, and some Kool-Aid mix. But we might not be able to get 2 sodas, which cost $1.50. You know what I'm saying? So I'm saying, hey, it might be 4 people to make the Kool-Aid thing work. But my point is, for the listener, and I forgot the name,
Brennan.
Team up, Brennan. Salute to Brennan. Hey man, we love you in advance. We love you.
No, I agree. And the other part I think of is it's not just that you can't. It's that there's a mindset involved. And I used to sell cars. And if I told you a story, I used to sell cars. And selling cars was the easiest job I ever had. I hated it. And it was the easiest job I ever had.
Not surprised.
And, yes, but it was so easy because people walked in the door wanting to buy a car. Oh my God, I spend my life hustling to get clients. They were walking in the door. I mean, come on, it was amazing. But the thing that I noticed immediately, I could tell, not by race, but by socioeconomic class, I could tell the class of the person by how they were talking about the car. And now even that class distinction is gone because our culture is changed. This is 20 years ago, 25 years ago when I was selling cars. When I was selling cars, if someone said, okay, what's the monthly note? They were thinking not ownership. They were thinking, how can I survive month to month? They were thinking the way Brennan was talking about, many people think was, I can't afford this. I don't have enough money. So I just want to survive month to month. That's it. They wouldn't care. I'm not joking. They wouldn't care how much the car costs. They wouldn't even ask the interest rate. I would try to tell them. They didn't want to hear it, but can I could swing $350 a month. Can we do that? I'm like, as a car guy, I can swing anything you want. I just got to give you a higher interest rate, or I got to give you a longer loan. But sure, yes, I can do $100 a month if you want to pay for 20 years at 19% interest. Sure, right? I mean, I can do whatever you want. And they just didn't seem to get that. But the savvier people almost always came from the middle class or upper class economics. And they always thought, well, how much is the car? Is it better if I lease it? What's the interest rate? And I could tell by that. And I thought the person who was asking monthly note, they weren't dumber or smarter. They just didn't know any better because their economic group, their peer group, didn't even talk about that. Their peer group was in a rental mindset. And the sad part is, if you look now at America now, that was 25 years ago, 20 years ago. Now, that's most millennials, not all, but most millennials aren't even considering ownership of anything. They don't own a house. They don't own a car. They rent everything, right? Everything's a monthly subscription. They don't have the ownership mindset. And this goes what I always say. Whatever starts in the hood goes to America. Always.
Oh, interesting.
Everything that starts in the hood goes to America. And now that's in America. Did I throw too much at you?
God bless America. We're going to need it. If you're absolutely right, if you're 115% right, then God bless America, because we're going to need it. One of the things that remind your message, your talk reminded me of is I used to be a college and career counselor. So my background is in education and counseling. So I've done counseling, I've done in-home counseling, school counseling, teaching. So I used to be a college and career counselor. And one of the messages that I would tell the 9th graders is, don't just lock yourself into one thing. Try out a lot of different things so you have options. Because powerful people have options.
Yes.
People who are not powerful don't realize that there are options. You know, and so like a person, so I have a speech and it's called I Want You to Be Powerful. And I do this lecture with different groups. And I said, there are powerful people, there are people who are valuable, and there are people with little power. And the powerful people can uplift, employ, provide services and resources to themselves and to anyone else they choose. People who are valuable work for powerful people. And people with little value can't work for powerful people because they have little value. They can't work for themselves because they have little value. And they often get trapped in the cycles of poverty.
Yes.
Now, one of the things that people have to do, this is the second part of the lecture. I'm going to give you the cliff notes. The second part is, if you want to do what powerful people do, or if you want to do what somebody else does, you have to do what they do. So if you want to be unhealthy, do what unhealthy people do, and you'll get there, like I just did. If you want to be healthy, do what healthy people do, and you'll get there, like I used to be.
Right.
If you want to be wealthy, do what wealthy people do, and you'll get there. And so if you want to move from having no options, you just have to force yourself into having options. Then you'll have options. Wealthy, powerful people have options. So the people who are saying, is it better to lease or to own? Is this the best place to buy this car?
Right.
Can I get a better deal from Jose around the corner?
Right.
Will Tony up the street give me better financing? You know, those people who realized that they had the ability to walk away and say no, or not right now, or I'll come back, but they realized they had options, were always in a far more powerful position.
Yes, agreed completely. I remember when my mother and father were trying to get us out of the South Bronx. My mom didn't know what to do. Right, my mother was an immigrant, and both were uneducated. Neither of them went to college. Both uneducated. My mother.
Where'd your mother immigrate from?
Germany.
Okay.
Yeah, my father was in the army over there. Met her. Back we go. So in that case, they neither were educated. They didn't have college degrees. My mother didn't even have a high school diploma. So it was limited on what she could do, right? She was limited, but she did know, I know how to do things. Like I know how to clean stuff. I'm bilingual, right? She knew those things. So she started to do those things. So she worked in a German restaurant because she spoke German and English. Then she worked in a German bank because she could do that, right? And then she started cleaning houses of wealthy Germans, because many wealthy Germans would come to New York, right? And they had nice big houses. Clean their houses because she spoke German. So she used what she had to create more options to make more money. If that makes any sense. So it's exactly what you're talking about. My father loved music. He was all about music. He had all he had the big reel-to-reels back in the 70s. He had all that 8-track tape, all that stuff, right? So he said, that's what I know. That's what I love. What did he do? DJ on the weekends. That's how we made money. All I'm doing is I'm just magnifying what you just said with an actual story from my own family. It's exactly what happened. We just kept moving.
I own a disc jockey company, so that's what Positive Vibes Incorporated is. We started off primarily as DJs, and we moved out to all forms of entertainment, and now we're doing, media and things of that nature. So we have a lot in common, man. The last name Varner comes from Von, Vaughan, a German name.
There we go.
Different story. It's a long story.
So let me grab a couple more comments if I could.
Let's do it.
Kathy says, maybe finding a different approach. In order to get a restaurant, you start out with special order buffets for venues or a street cart, then take part in profits to save for the bigger goal. A pizza company did that very thing here in Texas. They started out in the back of the pickup truck. It's what we're talking about, right? Yes.
Yep. Thumbs up.
Absolutely. So
thumbs up.
Thomas likes positive vibes. He likes
it. Thank you, Thomas.
There we go.
Yeah, I see you have a couple of libertarians that check in the show.
Oh, yeah. A lot of libertarians watch this show. Absolutely.
Okay.
It was important to get rid of Jim Crow laws and other forced segregation laws, but I think they started messing things up when they tried to force integration. That's something that should be allowed to happen naturally over time. Dan, I actually agree with you, and I think New York City and New York State are the perfect example of that. New York City never has segregation laws, yet we are the most segregated city in the country. Hands down. And I'm not making that up. Do your own homework. That's true. We're now
trying codified laws.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, but we had social stuff, didn't we? Yeah, we did. So yes, I think you're totally correct. We want people to allow to integrate. The problem we have after World War II was after World War II when they started giving out the mortgages to everybody, right? They literally had a rule on where the redlining rules, how many people of what ethnic background could be in every area. And again, if you guys think I'm making this up, do your own homework. You find this online if you want to. There was a percentage. I think it was 15%, I think, that could be either Irish, because of course they thought the Irish were the low people, or the Italians, the low people, or the Jews, the low people. Those are three groups. They have written in federal guidelines.
Yeah, it's
Jews,
codified.
Italians, and Irish. Those are the people they thought weren't the cooler people. You could have 15% of them, or 30%, whatever the number was. You know how many black families you could have? 0. Not one.
It was like 0. This. No, I mean, no, yes.
Yes, that's what it was. Yes, and this again, federal guidelines, not like it's some guy's just mad and hates Italian people or something. No, this is federal guidelines for mortgages. So I think it happened again and again and again. Yes. So John says we always enjoy evenings with Larry. Thank you, John. I appreciate that. Charles is on. He says, "Yo, it's Seko." I appreciate that. Absolutely. Yes. Brennan is back. Brennan's got something to say. All right, Brennan. In the South, they use government to justify their racism and segregation, not to create it. Society creates segregation, and government is an institution of society. I disagree that it requires government to maintain it. A good positive example is that forcing businesses to serve African Americans helped normalize the action. Without that, it would have been years before some of these businesses voluntarily served African Americans. Brennan, I know. I think you're wrong on that, brother. I really do. I know that feels right, but I disagree. Go ahead, Seko. You're going to say something. I'm going to touch this too.
Well, I would simply say that there may be some truth to that, but the overarching thing that happened is the African American or the Negro community got on code, and they said, you know what? If you're not rocking with us, we're not rocking with you. If you're not allowing us to, go through the front door and to be treated like everyone, we're going to walk away. And the thing, the bus boycott was a great example. When people talk about the bus boycotts, they really don't talk about the depth at which the in Alabama, 2 or 3 of those cities were almost brought to bankruptcy.
Yep.
And that was the look, things have changed in America, not because my white brothers and sisters have said, we got to change things. Things aren't going right. We need to do better. That's not what has changed things. It's always been economics. And that's one of the reasons why whenever you see a groundswell, a quote unquote Black Wall Street, it was destroyed. It wasn't destroyed because they really hated. It was destroyed because they hated, there was white supremacy, and it was money involved.
Yes, absolutely.
It was money involved.
Yes, they didn't care if there was a Black community over there. They were fine with that. They didn't like all the money going into that Black community when they thought it should have been going into the white community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they're like, hold up, these soldiers are coming back and they're spending all their money in the community, and we got to destroy that.
Yes, absolutely.
Because if they did not destroy that, and over and over, and see, Tulsa, Oklahoma was not the only site of Black Wall Street.
Absolutely. That's why I said Black
Wall Street. And it wasn't it wasn't the only one that was destroyed. Some of them were actually physically destroyed through mob terror. There's I have an image that shows all 75 of the biggest ones. All right. But in other areas, it was the government annexing the community and saying, hey, we're going to put the roads right through down here, and we're going to shut off this place. And so now people couldn't get to businesses, and the government just said, hey, we're taking this by eminent domain. And because of that, we're going to pay you just a little something, but we're taking the best resources. All right. It always comes down to the economics. It always comes. So what Brennan had on the screen, like I said, forcing businesses to accept,
they start fighting back, right? That's
the reason they were forced is because the cities were bankrupting.
Yep.
And so that's the piece that Brennan's point didn't make.
Yep.
And that's the underlying piece, because the governments wouldn't have done that.
Though here, right? And that is, as soon as the Jim Crow laws were actually removed and it was past the 60s, what happened in the South is almost a miracle. The South is very integrated now compared to the North, relatively, right? When you look at, don't get me wrong, when it comes to work, the North is much better with work, meaning people that from backgrounds get together and work together. But when they go home, it's all back to their own communities. It's all back to their own communities. The South is actually better than the North in that regard, right? Again, still segregated, but voluntarily, but better. Look at all the mixed race couples in the South. You would think there would be hardly any. There's lots, just like the North. right? You would think, why? Because once everything was removed, people began to slowly integrate. And one of the biggest reasons why people don't like the other, whatever that other is they don't know anybody who is the other, right? If you don't like Italian people, you probably don't know any Italian people, or the one you know is a jerk, right? Or you don't like Irish because you don't know any Irish people, or the one you know is a jerk. But if you actually know a lot of people of the thing, whatever the other is, you tend to be like, you know what? There's good ones, there's bad ones. Fine, I'll take you. Fine, whatever. Now your culture may have told you, I don't want that person of the other in my family. That often happens. But will I have them in my world? Often, yes. If you know more of them and integrate with them more voluntarily, you tend to be okay with them being in your world, and then eventually often even in your family. You bring them into your tribe. Humans are not racist naturally. We are tribal naturally. And then we're taught racism. We're taught that our tribe is our race or skin color. But we're not naturally racist. We're natural tribal. If you're in my tribe, whatever that tribe is, then I'm with you because we're all in the same tribe. But if I'm taught that, oh, those people aren't part of my tribe, then I become racist if it's based upon race, or anti-Semitic if it's based upon religion, or insert thing here, right? That must be taught through stories that go into my world and in my head, and I go, oh. An example I give all the time is, if you were a woman born in 1920 Germany, right? Are you born not liking Jewish people? Of course not. You're a baby. You're just born. You don't hate anybody. But you had to be told stories over the next 20 years to make you believe that the Jewish people weren't good people or were bad or evil or whatever stories you were told, so that when they went into the camps, you were like, whatever, they're those people. But if you weren't told those stories throughout your life, and then they want to put them in the camps, you go, whoa, what are you doing? You can't put, I'm German, they're German. Why would you put them in the camp? What's wrong with you? Of course you would say that. But you were told stories your entire life for 20 years on how they're the other and they're bad or they're this. So now they go in a camp, you go, whatever, they're the other. You don't care.
I think that's part of the story. Also, it's the environment. If you're in an environment where, because of, politics is a control of resources, all right?
Okay.
Economics is the control of resources.
Sure.
Okay. So if in a battle for control of resources, there's a group that's other, then there's going to be some tenuous situations. Now, the group that has the most power often will use damaging acts to hold the other group down so they can maintain empowerment. And by doing that, that helps facilitate an environment where there develops some what you might consider racism or bigotry, right?
Sure.
But I would say integration in many ways, forced integration, to go back to kind of what Brennan was saying, was like you were saying that Killer Mike mentioned, it was really a demeaning situation to the African-American community. Because look, when the civil rights groups started, they weren't asking for integration.
Right.
They were asking for equal protection. They were asking for equity and equal protection, right?
Absolutely.
And the government said, we ain't going to give you nothing you asking for, but we'll let you sit with some of our people. We'll let you go to some of these stores because we're going bankrupt, and we need to make sure that we keep these store owners okay and our cities don't dissolve into chaos.
Yes.
So here's another example of when Africans America, people of African descent, foundational Black Americans, ADOS, whatever term you want to use, when we say, hey, something was wrong and it needs to be fixed, we're going to give you something else. And they did it again with, hey, you know what? We're granted citizenship, but we're not having equal access to public jobs.
Right.
Oh, we're going to make a situation where, you're going to be unable to discriminate on race. As a matter of fact, we're going to say race, we're going to say immigration status, we're going to say gender, we're going to say this, we're going to say that, we're going to say that. So yeah, Black people, we see that you've been discriminated against and things have been done wrong, and we're going to fix that by helping everybody.
Right.
And by doing that, we're also going to make sure that our white women get the biggest benefit. So when you look at those laws that were created to hopefully bring some equity, the people who generated and benefited the most were white women.
Yeah.
and immigrants.
Yeah.
And I have nothing wrong with white women, love them. I have nothing wrong with immigrants, love them. I have something wrong with our country who always puts others before those that they misserved. And
No,
then, it's
I
crazy.
hear it constantly, right? And I feel it, right? The idea that when Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, the big people of the 60s and 50s,
that time period, right?
Right, that time period, they weren't talking about immigrants. They weren't talking about women, really. I mean, they weren't. I mean, they were, but that wasn't their main thing. They were like, no, black people. That's who we're talking about. And then that became everybody. Again, I'm with you. I want everyone to grow. Of course I do. I want everyone to grow.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd like us to move not from a government handout, but instead empowerment to have ownership. And that's the part we didn't get. And the example you hear me bring up often is you look at law firms in New York City. Maybe 10 years ago, some today, maybe, I don't know, with COVID, but surely 10 years ago, law firms would be big law firms in New York City, many of them, white shoe law firms, big law firms. They would say, no, we are, oh my God, we're so diverse. 10% of our population, of all our people in our company are black. You go, great. I don't see any. Where are they? Oh, they're all in mailroom.
Janitors.
They're all, they're in mailroom janitors. Correct. They're maintenance staff and in the mailroom. That's where they all are. Right. Which, not that I'm against those jobs. Those jobs pay and they put food on the table. I'm okay with those jobs. Great jobs. I'm okay with that. But they're only there. Then there's like one token black lawyer who will, of course, will only do something like civil rights. That's all he'll do. Right. So that's what they'll do. Right. And I want it to be ownership, which I don't see much of. And part of that is, to your point, this is the part that I say is on us. Not enough of us talk about ownership. Don't get me wrong. The system is absolutely against us having ownership and has been for 100 years or more. I'm 100%, I'm clear on that. At the same time, we have to start talking about a lot more. We have to stop talking about, I need a good job, which is important. But then where is that entrepreneurial ownership spirit of my own life, of my own culture, of my own home, of my own business? Where is that culture? And I tell you, a lot of it's lacking. And that part of all the piece, that part is ours.
Yeah, I agree, because we were fed a bill of sale that was horrible. Mm-hmm. We were told, okay, if you build something, you become empowered entrepreneurially, you have your own this, we're going to destroy it.
Yep.
Okay. And then we're going to say, now we're going to let you come to our places of work, but we're not going to hire you. And then we say, you know what, now I guess we're going to have to hire, and we're going to hire you just into the minimal positions and positions that have less opportunity for growth. And then over time, okay, now everybody's having more of a more equal opportunity. But for that 40 years, our community was saying, hey, just get an education, get a good job.
Yep.
Don't build, because if you build, it'll be destroyed.
Yes, absolutely.
And unfortunately, too many of our forefathers and mothers believe that was the way to go. And so when I was coming up, in Brooklyn, New York, and then Columbus, Ohio, where I grew up, we were told, hey, go to school.
Yep.
Get a good job. And I knew then that something was a little wrong with that. But I listened to what my elders said. I graduated, from high school and went to Hampton University. And at Hampton University, they told a story about how the students at Hampton, when it was being built, during the day, for a period of time, they built the buildings, and then they studied. So whatever you were doing, whatever, nursing or teaching, doctor, lawyer, Indian chief, whatever you were studying, some of your time was building the property, and then later on, you worked on so you walked away with a skill and an education.
And you understood the idea of building something that you have ownership of.
Right. So there was a sign, and I believe that this was a student's project, and it was all over the business place. And it said, what do you call a Hamptonian 5 years after graduation? And then in big letters, it said boss. And I tell you, that really impressed upon me that gotta take ownership.
Yep.
And then it came back to me, the liberation theology that I was imbued with growing up, where it said, you gotta take ownership of the relationship that you have with the Almighty to liberate you from your bad situations. And then the more that I studied Amos Wilson, there's a book by Amos Wilson that everybody needs to read. And there's a movie by Jason Black, which is called 7 a.m. 7 a.m. talks about the need for businesses and where there's economic empowerment and there's low crime, there's low teenage pregnancy and unwanted pregnancy and other things in areas where there's high self-employment, where that group can employ itself. It comes down to the economics. Jason Black put out that book in a movie, and another movie called Gentrification. Then there's a guy named, there's a movie called Black Friday, and Black Friday, I can't think of the guy who put it out right now. It talks about how our spending habits have led us to remain in bad situations. And interestingly enough, before Dr. King was killed, he was working on a plan where they were going to boycott Christmas spending for a number of years. So think about it. Just before Dr. King, so when he's saying we need to have all the, little black boys and little white girls singing together, okay, we hate you, you're a terrorist, we're going to kill you. But as soon as he starts talking about, hey,
let's start using economic power.
Bam.
Yeah. Yes.
So I think it all comes down to the money. I think it all comes down to the economics, but
it also comes down to power, right? I mean, because that's your point, right? Economics is part of economics creates political power, right? I mean, it kind of does, right? The more money you add, more power you have, more influence you have. By default, you're going to wind up having political power too. I think, didn't Charles Blow just write a book about something like this? I remember him saying something like, he quoted somebody, I forgot who he quoted, but he says, if a man wants to lynch me, that's his problem. But if a man has the power to lynch me, that's my problem. Right? So if he hates me, fine, he hates me. Fine, he hates me. But if he has the power to now act on that hate, legally, culturally, he has the power to act on that hate, now that's my problem. And his issue is he wants to get more people in power so that no one can have the power to act on that.
I love that. I love that. And the reason I love it is because I can take that same message and move it into the political realm. So politically, we have the two major parties. I know you represent the libertarians, but
happily on my sleeve, yes.
And the two major parties have not done anything for people of African descent since the early 60s. And the only reason that the things happened in the 60s is they were trying to win an election. And I'm horrible with names, but that seated president said, hey, Dr. King, hey, I see you got on. Dr. King was a Republican, hey, we can deliver this if you can force us to do it. And if you do it, we'll make sure that the civil rights and the voting and all those things that you're asking for, we'll start giving to you those. We'll start giving those incrementally.
Right.
So we gathered together. We all got on code for the ability to vote.
Yeah.
And some of us struggled. Some of us went through a lot of craziness, poll taxes, poll beatings. It happened in my family, my wife's family. But here's the interesting thing. So our ancestors, I used to hear this as soon as I turned 16. Your ancestors bled and died, so you have the right to vote, right?
Yes.
I heard that over and over.
I've heard that too. Absolutely.
But what became aware to me in 2018, and I think I'd be getting there before then, but 2018 it became crystal clear. My ancestors struggled, so I had the right to vote. It was up to me to make that vote more valuable.
Bingo.
And how do I make that vote more valuable? I make you, Mr. Politician, work for it.
Yep.
Now, too many of Blacks in America, African Americans, the foundational Black Americans, and those who immigrated here to America since then, is we don't go with the ask.
Yes.
We place politicians many ways as either celebrities
or our saviors.
Yes,
I knew you were going to say that word.
We talked about that before, right?
I knew you were going to say that word. Yep.
Right.
I knew it.
So what's your power situation with a savior. None.
None.
But check this out. The Bible says you need to get powerful. The Bible continually tells people to empower themselves.
Yep.
I think there's even a phrase where Yeshua says, "You'll do greater things with me than I am." I'm going to give you this power. I'm going to give you this power. Take this. Hey, I'm going to give you this power. You can walk on water.
I love it.
I'm walking. Oh, I think I'm not worthy. So my point is,
yes.
We've been given opportunity. We need to use that opportunity to empower ourselves. So my piece is the empowerment agenda. We should focus solely on things that will empower us. Mm-hmm. And if that means we're going to have to sit back one time and say, I ain't rocking with either one of y'all until you rock with me. So Biden, sorry. Trump, sorry. Okay, I had another option. So this is the first time in my life I voted outside of those two parties. I voted for the Libertarian, Joe Jorgensen, and for the good brother Spike. Okay. And it wasn't because, and I said this in our other conversation, because I was voting against Trump or voting against Biden. I was voting for my interests. And at that point, the Libertarian Party had more in my interest. Now, the other thing was I thought to myself, hey, if we can get enough people to vote for this party, then they'll be able to get on the stage.
Yes.
And then we'll have, what's the word? Options.
Options. Absolutely. Amen.
We'll have options. And so I was voting for something that had a little more of my interest in playing and to give me options. So I say that Americans in general and Blacks in specific, we need to get focused on things that will empower us. So if Twitter will empower us, do some time on Twitter. Getting your taxes together, getting your money together, getting your credit together, making sure that your child gets an education and a skill.
Yes.
An education and a skill.
Absolutely.
Making sure we can do things that will really empower us to really. So one of the things, and I want to say this very quickly, I'm a member of the Hampton Roads Black Caucus in Hampton Roads area, 757. Salute 757, Virginia. We're working on things that are going to make sure that people truly understand the power they have over the politics that impact their lives. Because here's the deal. There's more of us than there are of them.
Yes.
There's more of us who are not seated politicians than there are seated politicians. Seated politicians very often can't do some of the things they would like to do because of the politics of the seat.
Yes.
But they can be forced to do those things.
Yes.
They can be forced. They can be encouraged. And that's what our community needs to know, that you can say, if you want my vote, you got to do these things. You got to do these things. Check them off. Show me you did it. Then I'll work with you.
No, I'm with you.
Politics, quid pro quo.
I do want to bring up the idea of election integrity, right? People are concerned. So since you just gave me the time, let me show you this quick commercial about election integrity. Larry Sharpe here, host of the Sharpe Way show. With what's going on right now in D.C., man, everybody's talking about the election. Did you believe it? Not believe it? You scared? You're not scared? Well, how do you kind of figure out where you really stand and where others stand? Guess what? There's a survey. Yes, there is. Head over to the advocates.org election integrity survey. Yep, there's one for that too. Head over there, take that test, a couple of minutes, 2 minutes at max. Take it, share it with others. Let people see what you thought, what you did, and let them take it too. See where they stand with other people in this country taking this test. How else are we going to have that conversation we need to have to discuss what's going on in our country and how can we trust and feel confident in what's going to happen in the future? Well, one way, the election integrity survey, theadvocates.org. That guy's right. And by the way, the link is in the show description. Click that, take that, and make my sponsors happy. I would appreciate that so much. And it's free. It's like 2-3 minutes, and it's free. So please do that. It's good. My sponsors like it. I like it, and we have good conversations. I do want to grab some more. We're getting a lot of comments. I want to grab some more comments if I could. Let's see here. Adrian says, Larry, you never mentioned you were an Islander at one point. I was. And I was an Islander in the 80s when the New York Islander hockey team was a good hockey team. So I was actually a big hockey fan as an older teenager. I was, because I was on Long Island and the Islanders were a good team. So yeah, so that's why I'm a Yankee fan from the Bronx. Giants fan from the Bronx because when I was a little kid, the Giants actually played in Yankee Stadium. People don't know that, but for sure they did. And now an Islander fan because that's where I was. So that's kind of where, and a Knicks fan because Madison Square Garden was the place I went. So that's kind of where my my loyalties lie, if that makes any sense. So, hey, all right. So
Brooklyn is a blood type.
Yes. Question for you both. Are you worried that increasing government programs and spending weaken the individual and make them and communities less resilient to future events that can't be predicted?
Yes.
I do too. I always say the more you bring in government, the more you remove community. And you wind up now having a situation to where there are many communities that have relied upon government for so long that they've kind of lost the institutional knowledge that it takes to support themselves. And you find that many communities where you look at the small businesses and none of the businesses that are open there are owned by anyone locally. They're all owned by somebody else right outside of the communities. And not just that, you're seeing it now with the COVID response, closing the schools down. There were very few people who are there to teach the children. But if you went back 30, 40 years, there were. Right? When I was a kid in the Bronx, I came home from school 4, 5, 6 years old, walking home in the South Bronx at 5, 6 years old. No one does that now, but you remember that. Yep, walking home, right? And I come home, and my parents both worked. So I'd go to my neighbor's house in the same big building, 6 stories high. Is that what you could think of? Apartment building complex I lived in. So I headed over to another neighbor. I always says, I think she was Puerto Rican. She might have been Dominican, but I think she's Puerto Rican. And because she would teach the kids, local kids there in English and Spanish. So she'd go over our homework and the whole deal. So we had an institutional knowledge in our community that supported the kids because not all the kids were good at school. Some were, some weren't. So we had parents there who were there to say, no, I'm staying home with my kids anyway. I'll help your kids out. And we had local tutors, literally. If you didn't know, some people there. And you know what we had to pay her? A couple of bucks in food. That's it. We had to bring food over.
It was neighborly.
Yes, absolutely. So I think, yes, Sam. I mean, I don't know. Are we on the same page, Seko, or no?
Oh, yeah, I agree. I agree.
There we go. So Connie says, I agree with teaming up. Our masterminds, hold groups, I love that, has a motto. It's a happy knock life. I like that. Very good. I like that. Good.
Okay.
Let's keep going.
Nice image too. Good stuff.
Brennan, I had a pre-approved loan when I went car shopping. They tried to upcharge me on interest, and I pulled out my lower interest pre-approval. They actually found me an even lower interest rate than my pre-approval. They felt silly. They felt silly getting caught trying to rip me off. Brennan, you're right, and that was one of the reasons, I hate to say this, why I hated selling cars. Selling cars, I don't know the industry. I'm going to tell you where I sold cars was exactly the horrible stereotype you'd imagine. They were all about scamming, hurting people, and people off. They all were, and I couldn't work there. That's why I left. It was an easy job, but I couldn't be unethical like that because, Brennan, that story, that's not a lone story.
No,
that's
it's
a common
not.
Story.
That's not. And that's a great story of empowerment.
Yes.
Because you had the wherewithal to say, I want to change the narrative. Because somebody says, here's the plate I want to offer you. And you can say, I have this. Oh, well, let me give you this plate. It's even better. And you know what? My father taught me that very same thing. So I was going to buy one of my first cars. And he said, go to the bank first, get pre-approved, and just have the letter with you. And so the same situation that Brennan just shared, which was a great example, I went through the same thing. So they said, this is how much it's going to cost you, da-da-da-da-da. And I said, well, I think I'm going to go to the bank. And then he said, oh, let me talk to my manager. And he came back with a far better deal. He beat the bank.
There we go.
Yeah, beat the bank. And so, Brennan, thank you for bringing that up. That's how we empower ourselves, by having something of value. So we have to empower ourselves by getting things of value, holding on to them, and using them at the beautiful times.
Absolutely.
I know what's coming to an end, so I'll let you pull it out, brother.
No worries, no worries. Paula says, this motivates me. I like that. I love that. Yes. Josh says, I lived in the Detroit area for a few years in the early 2000s. Racial divide from suburbs to city was ridiculous. Oh, look at that.
Yeah, D-Town was really kind of difficult. Watch the movie Detroit. That gives a really difficult to watch narration of some of that racial divide that Josh was talking about. So, hey, salute to you, Josh.
Yes.
Looks like he plays hula hoops.
There we go. Seko, love the fraternity letters. My fraternity experience was so hugely important to broadening my horizons. Our frat, Pike, was next door to Omega Psi Phi House. They were great guys, and we used to have some good joint parties. I'm not sure what he means by joint, but I'm not going to even go there.
I think he means all the above. Hey, Joe, we love you, man. Thanks for your comment. I'm glad you had some great times with my brethren.
There we go. Anyone can support a business with their money or their feet. Yes, Kathy. Yes, absolutely. John
Don't
says,
tread on me.
This is why I'm all about blockchain decentralization beyond cryptocurrency. A voluntarious dream. It's coming. How do you feel about blockchain and cryptocurrency, Seko? It's a good question. Thank you, John, for that. Thank you.
I jumped into it early, and I didn't know enough about it. So I still have, Bitcoin. But I'm not doing as much as I could with it. So it goes up, it goes down. I really don't even play with it. I'm really kind of focused now on the services I bring to real estate investors. So I work with a couple of funds, and I'm able to provide these real estate investors with 90% of the purchase price, 100% of the rehab costs. So that's kind of what I'm focused on right now outside of teaching. So during the day, from 7 to 2 in the afternoon, I teach. The public schools, and then I do my help with investors. So I haven't paid a lot of attention, rather, to Bitcoin, and I should, because I do see that's the way. It's going to be the way.
Yeah, I think that the technology is going to keep growing and getting better, and people are going to start making the underground in cash in some way, whatever the appropriate coin will be. I don't know if it will ever actually be Bitcoin or not, but whatever, there's going to eventually be some kind of cash that will go back and forth that'll be a bit more stable. I don't know what that number, I don't know which one it is. I mean, in theory, if Bitcoin explodes to a certain level, it might level out and become a more stable, coin. But I don't know. Right now, I think it's still an investment.
Right. Well, it's like Forex. I used to be involved with Forex investing. And so we knew we had the yen, we had the USD, everyone had their own currency. So having multiple currencies is nothing new.
Right.
Having multiple currencies in a digital platform is something new. So
yes,
I would say if you don't know about it, learn about it.
Forex, by the way, is foreign exchange. For those of you who don't know what Forex is, that's what it stands for. So yeah. Matt Ferraro says, how can we get rid of barriers for entry in entrepreneurship, which disparately affects minorities from low economic populations? I say it's about ending licensing. That's one of the biggest things. Ending licensing and allowing it to, instead of being a license, to be a credential. Showing that some people can afford to make the next level to step up to a credential, while others can't. They can't do that. So, guys, Seko, is anything you want to bring up before we wrap this up?
Wow. Can we just say one last question or a comment? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I have tons of them. People love you. They love you here. Amazing content, you two. Okay. I love this analogy, and more people have libertarian friends. Yeah, so all kind of good stuff, Ohio, yes. I knew I liked Seko. You are you're winning. Whatever you're doing, winning. So, guys, if you want more on Seko, heading over to Twitter at Seko Varner. Also, if you care, positivevibes.net is his company. If you want to see what he's doing and how he's acting and all the stuff he's got going on, I'm sure he's happy. Plus, he also is a host of his own show. So if you want to watch his show, you can always do that too. I was on it. For those of you who don't know that, I was on it the other day. So
it was a blessing. Oh man, Larry was a blessing to the show. The Beach Brothers show. We deal with Virginia business and politics. So you can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Facebook. The Beach Brothers Show. I live in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And Larry, next time you're in the area, I have a coffee for you, brother.
I love it. I appreciate it. Guys, thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. Seko, thank you for coming. I will see all of you guys. Actually, I'm going to be, believe it or not, I'm going to be on Clubhouse in about 20 minutes. You guys want to go on Clubhouse? I can talk to you there, or I will see you all tomorrow.